my fellow introverts. Stacy here, your programming and test automation expert. So today we were supposed to be talking about file system and how to work with files, with folders, with paths in Python. We will talk about it a little bit, although I remembered a very particular case which happened in my career a couple of times, and each time I had a problem with figuring out how to do this, so I didn't quite remember how to do this. And if you encounter such a situation, I want to save you some time, and you will have a video which describes it, and also we will have a repository where you can just download the code if you want to. It's just for you. Everything we do in the YouTube is going to be there in that repo. So before we start, just a small reminder that Introverted also does some courses. So if you would like to apply for a course and actually grow your technical or soft skills, then please check the link. It's going to appear here above my head. So just check it and see which courses are interesting for you and apply. So let's start. Okay, so we will start with me introducing you to my favorite Python library for managing file system, which is pathlib. So for some reason I didn't know about it for quite a long time, but I hope you already know it and you're not going to be surprised that this is a very good library. But if you haven't used it before, enjoy. I hope you really like it. So let's go ahead and import pathlib. So we would do from pathlib import path, because this is what we're going to use for this example. And let's go ahead and first of all get the full path to this file where we are in right now. So print path file, just like that. So let's run it and see what happens. By the way, I am on Windows. This is just to show you that it also works on Windows. It works everywhere. So if you have Mac or Linux, it also will work. The same code that we're writing right now will work fine. So we have our path here, our full path. And what is very cool in compared, for example, with doing this with OS library is that we actually create an object. This is not a string, this is an object. So I can actually put a breakpoint here and do the debugging. And then we can do the evaluate expression. And let's write down our path from file. And as you can see, this is an object, and you can pick different information from it. So you can get the suffix, you can get the parents, the root even. So different things you can do with it, but this is not even close to what I want to show you, because there is a very cool feature which we are going to see just in 1 second. So let's get the folder first from our path, because currently if we run the script again, you would be able to see the full path, including the file name. But what if we want to get the folder? You can just do .parent. That's it. So let's run it. And as you can see, we get our folder, this one. So what I'm really thrilled to show you is my favorite feature of this library. If you want to join some paths, if you do it in OS, using OS library, then you would have to use OS path.join and then comma separated list of what you want to join. And this is going to be actually, as far as I remember, is going to be a string. But here, watch my hands. So we would do print path file dot parent slash, let's say we want to go to API and we want to get the files. API slash files.py. Just like that, just like in file system. So let's try to run it. And here we go. We have our Ubuntu 22.03 home Stacy YouTube API files.py. Does it actually work, or we just made a string again? So let's try to use it as an object. So we would do print path file. Oh no, sorry. Let's actually create a variable for this. Okay. And now let's print my path dot is file, let's say. Let's check that this is a file. And as you can see, this is true. So if we spoil it, just to be sure that it actually works, then we could do this, and we will see that this is false. So this actually works. I can show you another way of doing so. So we could do, instead of doing a parent, we will get the full path to this particular file, to OS tricks, and we can do 2 dots, which means that we want to go up 1 level. And then we do basically API and the file spy. Let's revert it just to be sure that it's found, and let's try to run it. And as you can see, it also works. So if you would have a lot of folders above and you want to go like 5 levels above, you can just do this one, then again this one, and again as many times as you want, and this will also work. So this is very cool. Apart from these operations, you can also do multiple stuff. We will do it in a second, but the most common one is actually getting the name of the file. So we can just get the name and see if it works, just like that. Okay, so let's go to the most interesting part today. So I will show you the case I was talking about at the beginning of this video. So let's get on with it. Okay, so now let's imagine that you work on a framework or something similar, like a library or something like that. The bottom line is that you want to have multiple objects which are very alike, as we have here our API folder, and we have files, folders, permissions, users, etc. If we go to, for example, to files, you see this is a representation of some API endpoint. So we have post, get, we have one class which represents this endpoint. Same with folders. We would have class folders, post and get here. Permissions, they don't have anything, and we have users, also post and delete here. So each of these files has a class which represents this endpoint, and inside there are some methods which allow us to do some requests, let's say. The bottom line is that they're very similar, and we want to have a class that combines all of them. This might be useful if you are, for example, automated tester and you write something with Selenium or similar technology, and you want to create page objects for your pages on your website, the ones that you're going to test. And you have like a pages folder, and you have multiple pages here. They all look the same. They are classes which have some selectors to some elements on the page. And in this case, you would create a class which would combine them all together, and then you can do pages dot login page, for example, dot login button dot click. In our case, we want to do something similar with the APIs, so we would do a class endpoint, let's say. And the idea is that if you have an init here, then you could do self, let's say files equals files. Let's import it. And we would do the same with folders. And yeah, let's import them as well, and so on and so forth. You get the idea. So this is fine. This is a good way of doing so, but sometimes you have very similar structure for all of those files. You have the same things passed to the instance when you create it. So it just makes sense to do this automatically. You're absolutely sure that nothing else is going to be happening in those files, and you want to do this automatically. So to do so, we are going to get all of the files which are inside of this API folder, and then we're going to import them dynamically. So there's not going to be any from import, but we're going to do this dynamically using some libraries. So first thing first, I will remove this stuff. I will just put path here. It's going to be an empty class, and we will remove this one, but instead we're going to use our favorite pathlib. So let's do from pathlib import path. We're going to need it in a moment. And we want now to actually do the same thing we did before, so we can get the path to API folder. So let's call it path to API. And we will do path file parent / API. So this is the path to our API folder. And now what we are going to do, we need a list of all of the files that are inside of this folder. So let's go ahead and do this. We will call it all files in API folder. Let's call it like this. And then we would need to do path to API dot iter_dir. And this iter_dir method is going to give us a list, well, actually a generator, but we can make a list of it, which will contain the objects of all of those files which are inside. So we can do print and try to print it and see what happens. Okay, as I said, this is a generator, so we need to cast it to a list to be able to see what's inside. So let's run it again. Okay, and as you can see, we get a list, and these are Windows paths. On Linux, you're going to get POSIX paths objects, but it doesn't matter, it works everywhere. And as you can see, these are our files. So what's next? Now we want to go through those files and import them. Want to do it automatically. So we're going to do this in a loop, and let's start with writing for file in all files in API folder. And now we need to import. So if you work in older Python versions for some reason, like in 2.7, maybe this still happens for somebody, then you should use the imp library. This is what I used before, but for newer versions of Python, I have 3.8 or 3.9 will also work here. You should use the importlib library. So let's go ahead and import from it. So we would do from importlib machinery import source file loader. And with this source file loader, let's import a file. So we would call it imported file equals, then we use our source file loader. And first thing we need to specify here is the file name. So we will do file.stem. Stem is the name of the file without extension. And then we need to specify the path to this file. So we go with file again, and we need to get the absolute path. And then we need to do load module. And one remark here, as you can see, it's complaining because it says expected type bytes or string, but got path. So we need to cast it to a string. To do so, it's also very easy. You just do as POSIX, just like that. We can try to run it, nothing will happen, but just to see if everything works. Okay, so we have imported our file. What's next? So now we need to somehow get the class from it, because as a reminder, each of these files, well, most of them, has a class which represents our endpoint. So we need to get this class somehow dynamically, and then we need to create an object from it. So to get the reference to this class, we need to actually get everything that is inside of this file, and to do so we're going to use the inspect library. So let's go ahead and import it. Import inspect. And with inspect, there is a nice method which is called getMembers. So we can actually do imported file dot get inspect getMembers imported file. I will put a breakpoint here and let's run it and see. Let's see what this does. So, okay. Yeah, let's remove this guy. Okay, so we're here and let's try to do this. So, inspect. I will just go ahead and copy this, just like this. And we see the result. There is quite a lot of stuff here, but the one that interests us is actually a class. So we need a class. So to do so, we can actually also use inspect. We can use inspect.isClass here to understand whether some of these guys are classes or not. So we can do actually a list comprehension to try it out, and then we can refactor it a little bit. So these are our members, so we need to do something like oh, and by the way, as you can see, these are tuples, so we actually need to get two values here. So we will need an object, then for object in, and we need an if inspect is class, and we need to pass the object here. So let's try it out. Okay, we didn't find anything. I know why, because this is actually our permissions file, I believe. So let's run it a bit further and see whether this one gives us something. Okay, so we now have the folders. Folders did have a class, as we can check here. So actually, as you can see, it found a class, so we can actually use it. But one thing that I'm suggesting here is not to use a list comprehension, because it is a bit it is a bit inconvenient that you have to get the first element from this just to get one element. So we're going to use any. Let's use any object for underscore object in the same thing. Okay, this will give us a true, which is okay, but we need the object. So I'm going to use a very cool feature which is called the walrus operator, which allows you, if you want to check something in an if, and then you want to simultaneously create a variable and assign this value to a variable, you can do this with the walrus operator. So what we actually have to do here, we need to put this into braces, and then we need a variable. So let's call it class in file. Walrus operator looks like this, and this is it basically. So we can just to check whether it works, we can do this and then do print class in file and then run it, and let's see the console. You see, it was actually executed. So if we run it a couple of times, you can see that it's being printed. So let's go ahead and copy this guy, and we will do an if here instead of this guy. So we will do if this long operation, and in class in file we actually have our class. So the last thing is actually to assign this class in file to an attribute inside of the endpoints. So let's go ahead and use the set attribute function from Python. So we would do set attr. We will need an object of the endpoints, so we can do endpoints equals endpoints, and we will use endpoints object here. Then we need to call it somehow, so we will call it just the same as our file name, stem, stem, and then we will use class in file as a value, and we need of course to create an object of it. Whew, that was hard, so we can try to run it and see if it actually worked, and I will show you how it looks like. So I will just put a breakpoint here, and let's rerun it. Okay, we get some kind of an error. Oh yeah, because you see it created a PyCache inside of our API folder, so we actually have to verify whether the imported file is a folder or not before importing it. So we actually can do it quite simple. We would need just to do if a file is file, just like that, and then we do all of this stuff. Okay, so let's try to rerun it. Let's run it and see if it works. So it actually went all the way through our code and stopped on the print endpoints. So let's do evaluate expression and see what is inside of the endpoints. And voila, these are our files, folders, and users. To be sure that it works, we can do files. This is our result, and we can do, for example, a post, and it works. Let's do users, delete, also works. So this is the way you can do this. Of course, naturally, this thing is very long, so you can put it into some kind of a function or a method if this is a class. So there are multiple options of doing so. The get members actually is a very cool function as well. It's not related directly to file systems, but you can actually get different things like doc strings through it. So if you do inspect get members and find the docstring object, this way you can do the same thing, but you can collect, for example, the docstrings from all of your classes or functions or anything else inside of the code. So these are just a couple of ideas where you can use it. I personally used this one for page objects and collecting some objects for testing, but there might be other options of using this. So I hope you liked this approach. I don't recommend using it on daily basis. This is probably an overkill to just do all of the imports like that. But for some particular cases like frameworks or libraries, this is a very cool approach. So definitely use it. You will find the link to the repository on our channel. I will also put it somewhere to the links to this video. And yeah, subscribe, like the video if you liked it, and I will see you in 1 week. Have a very happy coding!